Hello there and welcome back to The Closet Historian and back to my old house that I'm fixing up bit by bit, although it has been betraying me so far this year, but we'll talk about that some other time. Anyhow, I have still been working on the foyer room behind you, although I started back in early fall, late summer of last year. I have still been chipping away at the stenciling and hand painting I wanted to do in this room, so I think it's time to dive back in and show you what I've been up to. Now, while I was trying to figure out the designs for the stenciling on the walls in this space, the stenciling that I originally was not supposed to do, but that's never really stopped me before, I had been mocking up what the design would look like above some wood paneling, because eventually I would love to actually put half paneling into this room. And then I realized while spending too much time in Photoshop that it wouldn't be that difficult to go ahead and do faux paneling on my walls as well. Especially as due to some other, let's say, setbacks or more practical investments that will need to be made this year, I don't think I'll be putting in any wainscoting in here for quite a while. And I wish I could say I completely planned all of this out, but really I just did it by eye on the first little bit to try it on the wall, and ended up having to stick with my original measurements, which were 2.5 inches for the gaps and 8 inches wide for each of the paneled sections. Okay, I got most of the black done yesterday. As you can see, this pattern really consists of black and gray to create the illusion here. So I apparently did not continue this line, and I did not continue most of the bottom because it requires sitting on the floor and doing some measuring. And my body just gets wrecked doing that. So, but seeing as my legs are already destroyed, I've taken some Advil and we can keep going. Thank you, Fia. These are boxes that need to go to Goodwill, including this jumpsuit that I actually, I wish I was cool enough to wear a siren suit, but I'm just not. So I'm gonna donate that as well. So this all needs to go to Goodwill and therefore the back of my car. So it's just sitting there. But the goal today is I might put window film, stained glassy film in this window as well, because why the heck not? I did get the little gold bits up on this wall yesterday. As you can see, I still had to finish both this top of the stencil and also the gold bits up there. I have to re-stencil the pattern here because I had done it, but it was crooked and it was just gonna bother me, so I took it off. I actually have to go over all of this with the green again, because as you can see, it's not the best. So I need to go over it with the green. I do that by hand as opposed to trying to line the stencil up again, because that's even more irritating. So I need to hand paint all of this with the green. Then I need to do the light and the dark. But I'm gonna start by doing the gray down here and along the faux chair rail of it all. And then I might take a break by cutting colored film to go on that window. We shall see. But I do also still need to fix that spot. Yikes. I have the small border done for the most part over here. That all needs to be filled in. You can see the little registration gaps that I added to the stencil so that it would hold its shape. But I need to go ahead and fill the registration gaps in. And then obviously I need to stencil the rest of the bottom border, do the little doodads, and then the mid border here as well, which obviously has not been done. And this area in general is just a mess. And obviously some shoe organization and general organization in this room would be helpful. But I'm tired and grumpy today. So let's see how much more of this corner I can get done, because we're taking it one corner at a time in this room, doing the best I can. Well, pals, it's 8:15 at night. And this is how far I got. Oh, I have painted in bits. I have re-stenciled this area. I've painted in the black shadows on this part of the design, but I still have to do the light bits on this side all through here, and then finish up the gold dots as well. And then obviously this section could use some work as well here. What I haven't done is painted the floor, obviously. So bit by bit here. And you can't really see it right now, but I did do some stained glass work on here, AKA this window is all clear glass. And a lot of the dirtiness around the edges of the paints on the other side, and therefore currently inaccessible to me. So this side I cleaned before I put the film on, but The other side has paint flaking off it and is not actually on the exterior of my house. There's a storm window covering it, so I can't really access that at present, sadly enough. But I did go for some cyan in the center here and a little bit of green, like a grass green color film on this buddy as well. But of course, you cannot see any of the stained glass effect here at nighttime. But you can see what this corner looks like after a whole weekend working on it, which my body is now broken. Oh, I don't know. Do you think I should paint the floor? Just kidding. I've just done the prerequisite, remove everything from the room, except for that family of dust bunnies down there, and apparently one more cat toy I missed. The router is balancing precariously, or the router and the modem are precariously on top of the air conditioner there. Again, I would love to remove this tile, but I just don't think it's possible at this current juncture, sadly enough. Even Oliver agrees. I have vacuumed this rug twice. That's all I can really do for now. I'm gonna roll it up, get it out of the way, and then I have to scrub the floor clean before I can go ahead and paint it black to match the other black floors in this house, which again, are they holding up a number one fabulously? No. But one day I will replace all of the flooring in this house and or have it restored, if that is something that is actually possible. It's under a couple of layers of paint already. In this case, a shiny burgundy paint. And then I'm gonna put the black on top of that. And if in any way down the line that's actually possible to restore these, we'll try and do that. If not, then I will replace the floors in the downstairs of my house. Of course, we are not in the current budget bracket to do something like that. So for now, we're just going to eliminate the burgundy by painting this area with the black floor paint so that we can see the dust even more against the black, as I like to do. But we can see what I have accomplished so far, at least with the decorative scheme above, on our quest for a much more Haunted Mansion vibe. And I'll see if I can't remove these 1970s tiles as well. I'll take a look, but I highly doubt it. Okay, so there was one loose tile here, so I took it out. And there's like a piece of plywood, 1/4 inch underneath, that is sitting on top of these floors. Now, for all I know, there's a massive hole somewhere along here. And if that is the case, I can buy a new sheet of plywood and do this again. I assume that the reason these tiles are here is because it's a snowy place and kids are tracking their wet and muddy and snowy feet in and out of the door, and that this floor got ruined right there. And instead of doing something about that, they went ahead and put these tiles down in this rather asymmetric fashion, which I hate. So I have no idea what I'm gonna find underneath this. Anything could happen. So this is what we would call, my friends, in the business, a mistake. But as you can see, these tiles are barely held down. This trim is actually 2 pieces. This piece is like balsa wood, and the little bit on the outside is actually like practically foam. So it's coming off no problem. But I'm going to go ahead and see why this tile is here. And we can find out together, because instead of finishing this video in a nice way, why not make it chaotic? That's right. I did some initial exploration and then I found that the tile was coming up very easily. So I had some coffee. I went and I changed into some more robust clothes, found my gloves, safety goggles, etc. Safety glasses, I mean, and some empty cat litter bins. And all the tile popped off and all the grout came off. I would say that in under an hour, maybe an hour total. It took me to take all of that off. And mostly it was just gently tapping it with the tool and it came right off. Nothing like trying to get old peel and stick up. This was real tile and only barely glued down, which I wish I could say was the same for the piece of plywood, which is screwed down as opposed to nails. I thought it was nails, but as I've pulled up the first few, which you can see my assumably original floor under there, as I pulled up the first few I found out that there are threaded screw posts, but that it looks like a nail head. People who were renovating the 70s here used 1,000 nails anytime they could use anything, which I'm hoping means that this is just nailed down and not glued down, but I'm about to find out. And yes, I did lock the cats away and find the shop vac. Also, this was not on the schedule today. No one is surprised there. That's right. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Well, so far it is just floor underneath. I mean, obviously it's damaged. No surprise there. But this plywood is, of course, nailed every 6 inches or less, perhaps, with these weird screws / nails, like a threaded nail. So I can't just pick the plywood up off the floor. Why they thought it was going to shift at all with heavy tile on it, I don't know. But, you know, my constant issue with the 1970s is that apparently nails and or screws were free at the time, and you could just apply liberally at your leisure, which makes reversing anything you did then super fun. I mean, at least if they were screws, I could just go with a drill and unscrew them all, but no. So I'm having to chisel the plywood off. I think this is a 4x8 sheet that they just laid down, and that's how they determined the size of this area, is just that's how big the piece of plywood was. So there's no seams in it as far as I can tell. It's very brittle, just like the tile was. So this is how far I got. I would say I'm like, what, 1.5 feet maybe, if we're being super generous, probably 12 inches in. It took me about an hour and a half to get this far. Hopefully there'll be less nails in the middle because they thought surely it wasn't going anywhere. I'm just hoping to discover that the floor is all intact, even if it's ugly, because I can give it a quick sand, give everything a nice clean, and then just paint it all black. And at least it will be level, which is going to be so nice. And a lot of this is covered by the rug that I keep here, but it would still be nice to have it all be one level plane and then all black. So one little bit of a fix at a time. And now I still haven't retrieved that cat toy from underneath the radiator. But for now, I need to put the rug over this area so that the cats can't get into this, free them because they've been locked up for a couple hours, and then make myself some rice so that I can have dinner. That's right. The next night, one more foot removed, bit by bit. But so far, underneath, it's just the floor. I mean, destroyed, but same level at least, so I can paint it to look like the rest. But I am hoping that they just put this here, and it's not covering up anything extra. Still have my fingers crossed, basically. But at the same time, of course, it would be disappointing if they just ruined the floor for the funsies, and no other reason. And here's what this side that you've seen finished for longer looks like. I do still have one tiny pane that I need to put the correct blue film on. I ordered it, and they sent me the light blue instead of the dark blue. So I had to email them, and then they were like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Guys, I've used both, I promise." So they just finally sent me the dark blue so I can finish this. It's this last window pane in there where you can see the more white showing. That still means it's dark blue. And then these windows will be, at least pretend to be stained glass windows at last. As you can see, the wallpaper still goes all the way up the hall. I can probably at least remove this piece, so I should really work on that. But my faux paneling is here. My faux paneling is here. It's something, it's kind of fun. And then I have the top border on this section. I have to do some faux finishing on that to make it look like this is peeling away from an older wallpaper. I'm gonna make it look like there's another wallpaper that this covered on top of instead of just this stained bare plaster. But I have to do the large border on this side of the room as well. And yes, this place is generally a mess because I've been working in here and not keeping it clean, or keeping it clean in stages as needed. The last bit of update for in here is that this gas fireplace, it's like a ventless gas fireplace. It's a pretty modern thing. I mean, obviously it's cast iron, made to look old, made to look like it has real logs inside, but it's all done by gas. I looked up this little guy, and this is like a $4,500 machine. So she's pricey, but I looked it up because I wanted to know if it came in any other colors. Because I'm wondering, because I don't think this is very old, I'm wondering if I could swap it like if they would do some sort of a discount on a new one, like if I can trade it in for a black one, because this exact model comes in black and also in dark brown. Obviously, I would like a black one because it would go with the rest of my house much better than this random red, which does not fit the vibes, or it fits some vibes, but not my particular vibes. Even if this was like in the kitchen, it wouldn't bother me as much, but this, you know, is a green, I'm a green gal, so green or black would definitely be better. So I'm going to see if either I can trade this in for a black one, and if not, then I will probably ask the company that sells these in town, because there's only one supplier of these that I can see in Albany. I'm going to see, they have smaller models. This one is like the largest of these stoves that they make, and it's rated to heat like up to 15 or 1700 square feet. And if my boiler downstairs goes out, this little guy does put out a lot of heat and will keep this house going. I learned that the hard way last year. So that's why it has stayed, even though it doesn't match my vibe. And it's kind of like in the middle of the main thoroughfare, like the enfilade of my house. Not great. I kind of wish that they had put one of these here with a flue outside, maybe like a little bit more of an old fashioned. It's all right. But they also do have smaller models of these that are under $3,000. And I could save up for a smaller, like go down one size model. It would be a little bit thinner and a little bit less wide. So it'd be less of a like trip hazard in the hall here. And I could get one in black and just have them haul this one away and have a new one installed. I just don't want to mess with gas lines and pilot lights and stuff like that myself, because I don't want to accidentally blow up my house or poison me and my cats. So, you know, but I'm glad to know that this company, because like these are newer stoves, hopefully I'll be able to get a different one that is black. Took me about, I want to say 2.5, 3 hours to finish demoing the plywood up off the floor. It was pretty brittle because it was very old and dry. So it was coming off in chunks and pieces. And of course, again, there were screws every 3 seconds. So I had to pull those up. And you can see why they put that there. There's definitely a wear pattern here, but in general, the finish is gone on a lot of what was obviously the original floor once upon a time. Like some areas, the finish was just completely worn away. And then some areas, you can see what it may have kind of looked like back in the day. So obviously this needs, I mean, if we were to refinish these, it would need quite a go. Some of it's already down to raw wood. To bring it back, again, this room is subfloor, so that would have had wall-to-wall carpeting probably from the start. Either that or there was floor like this that was once upon a time ripped up, but I don't see why they would do that. I think they would just put carpet on top of this if they did that. And again, this side has been painted. And I'm going to go ahead and paint, well, I'll sand the roughest bits of this away, give it all another vacuum, give everything here a dry sweep and dust, and then a wet mop. And then I will go ahead and paint this room black to match the rest of the downstairs for now. That was enough crawling around on the floor for today. I'm gonna go ahead and work on some ceiling designs for in here for later on down the line. And then also some designs for possibly some pillows that coordinate, but don't necessarily match with what the other motifs are going on in this room. Just to bring a little bit of black into the pillow design on the armchairs that go here. So we'll see how that goes, but it's definitely time for coffee. At this point, I have gone, I didn't mop in here. I vacuumed and I vacuumed twice. And then I just went hands and knees, scrubbed the floor with a rag. Old school. I did not get any clips of that, so sorry. So yes, this is what it looks like after I scrubbed it on my hands and knees. I think we need to fix this. So I am going to go ahead and touch up this one spot and then paint the floor. Again, we're not going for perfection here, for that is not actually currently possible. We're going for homogeneity. And also I'm gonna have to lock this up. And it's not gonna like that, but as you can imagine, him walking onto wet floor paint is not also something I want to deal with. So sadly, he's about to be locked up in his bedroom and he will, I'm sure, complain about it. Coat number 2 is on. Hand painted, wrist sad, etc. So I have painted the second coat on the floor. I will now have to go ahead and touch up anytime I've nicked anywhere else. And then also where the plywood / tile was covering the trim, I will have to touch that up with the trim paint anyhow. So I'll probably touch up the trim areas tomorrow night and let this sit for a full, hopefully 48 hours before I actually put anything on it. I also need to order a rug pad for underneath my rug, so I might try and do that as well. And I also kind of need to paint my like little vestibule because it's mostly light gray, but at the very top they painted it burgundy, of course. No burgundy, please. No more. I cannot. What was with it the 90s in burgundy? Just stop. Well, there's already paw prints on my freshly painted floor. No surprise there. It's all black. It's been curing for over 24 hours, technically. And I do believe you're not supposed to put anything on this floor for 30 days. But again, let's talk to the paint people about who cannot use a room for a full 30 days. I don't know. Not me. I'm going to go ahead and grab my trim paint here, which these are shiny bits, not missing bits, but whatever. But this is missing bits. So I'm going to go ahead and use the trim color to paint along here because that looks not cute. And then do any other touch-ups where I've hit the radiators with the floor paint, etc. Which, although they are the same color onyx, the paint formulas are different, so they mix up differently. So I'm going to go ahead and touch up those, and then the rug pad just arrived. So I can put the rug pad out, put the rug down, and then start rearranging this room, which probably the furniture will be in the same sort of arrangement it was before, but you never know, so I'll keep you updated. And I painted it the green color. Not perfectly, but the burgundy wasn't perfect either, and anything's better than burgundy. Sorry to the burgundy lovers out there. I don't hate burgundy, it's just not this particular vibe for this particular room of my house.
And you thought I was finished with painting, didn't you? No, not so much. I still have this small patch here above the main archway into the sewing parlor that was just bare plaster, and I really should have scrubbed the old wallpaper glue off this area, but how to do that without reactivating the glue that was still holding the rest of the wallpaper on? So I am afraid I simply didn't bother. I just went in with the lighter gray color from the faux paneling and painted in this section. Fortunately, I found this cracked away area rather hard to faux finish around the edges just because the light actually comes in from two distinct sources at different times during the day. From the upper right from the stairwell windows and then also from the front door coming in on the left. So if I shaded the edges too dramatically for either of those light sources, it looked wrong for half of the day. So I ended up knocking back the shading of this area so it was just a very thin border around the edges just to give an illusion of the cracking plaster as opposed to peeling wallpaper. I somehow wanted to visually split the difference, as it were. And luckily there were some hairline cracks in the plaster itself that I could just go ahead and exaggerate by rubbing some of the darker gray paint into them, and then again knocking that back with a wash of the original shade over everything, as I had originally been a little bit heavy-handed with my stagecraft training, seeing as I'm much more used to painting my old set, as opposed to an actual living, breathing room. I did go ahead and grab a random stencil from my pile of designs I've been working on over the last year or so, and just held that up to the wall with a little bit of the arsenic paint from the other adjoining rooms. I tapped on a slightly dulled version of that color with actually a makeup sponge of all things, but for one or two bits it actually is super useful and very clean. And I really didn't want this area to stand out. That was the reason that I was doing this faux finishing in general, is just to make it stand out less than white plaster. So I kept things dark and within the same color schemes, hoping that this area wouldn't really draw too much attention to itself, but still had something to offer if you happen to notice it. And of course, the last corner of this room had not been stenciled yet, or at least the very top border had, but the rest had not. But because my large border stencil was on the large side, it would be extremely irritating to get it completely flat against the wall above the archway around all of this trim and even into the small corner next to the coat closet that I had left. So I ended up actually holding this up to the wall and tracing in the design with a pencil and filling it all in by hand, which was of course time consuming, but slightly less frustrating than actually having to stencil in these tight spots. So I hand painted in all of the green mid-tone on the main design of the walls, the faux wallpaper section of it all, although it is done on top of wallpaper. So how faux is this wallpaper at this point? It's just hand-painted wallpaper, right? We can say that? It's much classier if I say that I have hand-painted wallpaper as opposed to that I hand-painted over the wallpaper. It may seem a small distinction, but I do think it's valid. but I painted in the lights and darks above the arch and into the corner here as I had done for the rest of the room. And also picked up my ruler and level again to go ahead and sketch in the paneling for below this section as well. I had a light switch to work around, but I think I made it work. I initially didn't think I was going to be able to finish this last section for this video, but when I got sick last week, I decided to spend some of my resting time finishing up all this painting while listening to the NASA live streams. Since my voice had gone missing and I couldn't exactly finish up this video and record this voiceover for you all. But I am really glad to have all of the stenciling and hand painting on the walls in this room completely finished at this point. And my last layer for this faux wallpaper design is to stamp on these little cross points, these little brads at certain points in the design. I have to do an underlayer of gold colored paint, and then I can do the gold metallic paint over that. The metallic paint is pretty transparent, so I have to layer yellow underneath if I want a full shiny gold brad in my design. I like to think that these are the gold plated nails that's holding all of this stone Gothic tracery in place. Now this cute little wall sconce is actually the only hardwired light in this entire room, and to say that this was not really up to the task of welcoming any potential visitors into the entire home would be sort of an understatement. So I have long wanted to update to something a tiny bit larger and a little more appropriate for an 1890s home. Of course, I do quite like to research Victorian period interiors, whether that be house museums that are still in place today or homes that are still extant, as it were, and get an idea for what sort of lighting was typical of an entry or front parlor area of a mid to late 19th century home. Still, I know from some remnants that are still in my basement that this house did have gas fixtures at one time. I can only assume that was what was installed when this house was first built in 1890. So I thought it might be nice to try and find a gas wall sconce that had been refitted for electrics, or perhaps a sconce that had been made later to replicate that gas fixture look. And while I did manage to find something that was almost exactly what I was looking for at an antique shop nearby, unfortunately I did have to have it installed by an electrician just because I went into the box and didn't know exactly what I was looking at, and I'm not experienced enough to know what is and isn't safe, so for peace of mind I did have this installed by an actual electrician. And that brief double checking of the wires and install did cost 3 times what I paid for the light itself, but I digress. And of course I have this fitted with a color change LED light bulb so that I can change the hue and shade and quality of light at any time I wish. And luckily I finally received the correct color of window film so I could finish staining this last pane of glass, as it were. I did make a paper template and then trace that onto the film. Make sure you're cutting out on the right side of the film if you do something like this, because there is a wrong side and a right side to the film, and sometimes even a square window is far more asymmetric than it may first appear. And once I dry fit that piece of material in the corresponding window just to make sure nothing had gone haywire, I gave the window a last clean with some Windex and then sprayed both the window and the piece of film itself with a bit of soapy water. This is a very small amount of soap in a water spray bottle here. I just spray both of these down, position the film where I want it, and then reposition it until I have it actually correct. And then finally I had the slightly goopy task of sealing these last few windows with the black silicone sealant, which gives a much more leaded glass and clean appearance, as long as I don't get too goopy, which again is very easily done with this stuff. It's awful to try and get it off your hands, so if you ever work with silicone, my tip is put on nitrile gloves first. And another sort of sillier project was that I have these large faux pumpkins that I picked up last Halloween. And to me, these immediately felt like year-round pumpkins. However, this white pumpkin, while I do like a white pumpkin, it just again stood out too much in this nice, dark, moody space. So I decided to tone it down by painting it the same color green as the accents on the walls. And I faux finished this with a little bit of orange to try and make it look like what is, I believe, called a fairy tale pumpkin, which I can only assume that variety of pumpkin is named as such because it looks like something that could easily be turned into a carriage for Cinderella. And then it was time to start working on my coordinating pillow covers. This is the same shade of Dupioni silk that I used to make the window shade, so that matches, but the design I'm putting onto these pillows doesn't exactly match the shade or the designs I have on the walls. For this first side, I cut out a square of kind of Gothic tracery, and I can make this design available on Pinterest, so I will link that below. But I cut this out of some black flock material and tried my best to iron this into place and make it stick. Really, this heat transfer vinyl material is made for t-shirts and not for Dupioni silk, but I do what I want. And I will be using this 12 by 12 inch patch as an applique on a piece of 20 by 20 black velvet to create the first side of my pillow, and then the other side of the pillow will be this silk with a different central design, so that the pillows are a bit reversible, so I can have the more black side of the pillow facing forward when I want a darker look, and I can flip them if I want to brighten things up. So once I got everything to stick to the silk, I did just fold the edges of this very large applique towards the inside to clean things up, and then found the center of my big piece of black velvet, though it took me a while to figure out which way the nap was going on this stuff. Working with velvet, it's always a challenge. And after I had this pinned where I wanted it, I did actually hand baste the entire applique down onto the velvet, because I could tell this was a rather plush velvet and it was just going to shift all over the place. And even with this hand basting, which I'm not even straight stitching this or felling it, I'm actually back stitching this as a form of basting to try and get it to not move as much as possible. But even with this much basting, these pillows were not the most fun thing to run under the machine. I then just top stitched this applique down into place using a matching mint green thread so that wouldn't be seen. And on the entirely silk side of the pillow, I did stitch the pillow fringe down along the edges. To do this, you stitch the free edge of the fringe, which actually has these gold threads temporarily holding it in place, towards the inside, and then stitch the edge down around the edge of the pillow. That will then get sandwiched between the two layers of pillow. This is actually a very simple project, and yet I've managed to make it quite difficult for myself with all the hand basting and actually the delays between the two pillows, because I made the first pillow, realized I was about 2 inches short on the pillow fringe to make the second pillow, and had to wait for more fringe to arrive from Deco Pro, my favorite source for upholstery trims on Etsy. I can link them below. But I'm still getting used to making slightly fancier pillows. I feel like I kind of skipped the pillow stage of sewing. I went straight into clothes, and now I'm learning to do home decor stuff afterwards, which technically I think is supposed to be easier, but usually the fabrics and trims are thicker, so I find that actually more of a struggle. And of course, yes, anytime you're working with velvet, it doesn't matter if it's apparel or home decor, it's going to add a level of frustration just because the pile of the velvet is fighting you all the way. And here I am basting the two sides of the pillow together. If you are really clever, you can actually put a zipper in along one of these edges. I just left one of the edges open and then ended up whip stitching and actually back stitching the pillow shut once I had put the pillow form inside, so now I can only remove them by removing that stitching. Again, it's much cleverer to put a zipper in, but I was unfortunately not equipped with enough patience to go ahead and do that for these particular pillows. And the most fun part about this is pulling the string that holds the ends of the fringe together temporarily apart and finally freeing the fringe. It's just so satisfying. Past me had also sprung for actually feather-filled pillows for these, as opposed to polyfiber fill, so these pillows do feel extra plush and luxurious because of that. And I just wanted to include this footage of my supervisor because he is so darn cute. I know he can't help it, but sometimes it does get a little obscene. And using that exact same method of two identical pieces sewn with fringe sandwiched in between to make the pillow, I actually made a tablecloth as well, just a big square with an additional split from the center of one of the flat sides to the center of the square itself to allow for the pole of my table lamp, to stick through the tablecloth, sort of like how you would make a tablecloth for an outdoor patio table with an umbrella. Same idea, I have a lamp instead of an umbrella.
This is a live view from the Orion spacecraft on the Artemis. It's now been 5 days, 1 hour and 54 minutes since we launched.
Thank you, Muffin.
And I did finally put this black and green jacquard that I bought back in London to use. A slightly weird little tablecloth, but we can just say it's custom. That's right. And again, I was referencing images from my Pinterest boards, both my Victorian interiors board, where I look at actual Victorian interiors, and also just the moody pictures that I had pinned on my entry and hallway board. I will link to my main interiors Pinterest board below if you would like to browse the kind of things that I look at while getting inspired for putting together my interiors. And something you can't help but notice when looking at Victorian entryways and parlors and spaces in general is that it was very, very trendy to have interior plants. In their case, the more tropical and rare and the further the plant had come from, the better. It showed that you were wealthy, it showed that you were interesting in some way, and that you could keep a plant alive or had servants who could do so. So really it was a way to show off. So I did reference these Victorian interiors to get inspiration for which sorts of faux, in my case, plants I wanted to incorporate into my space. And yes, fake plants because I don't have a green thumb for houseplants, and also Xander loves to eat them. So it's guaranteed that if they're not made of polyester, either he or I will kill them.
Shall we go on a tour of the foyer as it stands currently? Here I am at the top of the stairs where things are sadly unchanged, including the planned things I want to do to the floor, but that's neither here nor there. And I just started putting things on this future gallery wall, even though it's still the old wallpaper and the peeling old wallpaper at that. But importantly, the windows are so fun now. I love having the light, the colorful light filter in all day and move around throughout this space, especially down into the foyer itself. But let's go ahead and go down there and I can talk you through some of what has been accomplished and what my future plans are for this space as well, even though I still have a cold, so I'm sorry about being slightly husky and slightly nasally, and in this room, very echoey. Here's what these windows look like up close, by the way. So you can see they're sealed with black silicone, which from far away gives it a much cleaner finish, I like to think. And this is a wavy finish film, not the dark green, but the rest is. For some reason, Decorative Films is not making this stained glass film in dark green yet, so they need to get on that, just for me. Not that I would fix it, because goodness. Here on the landing, where I very much need to remove this sad, sad wallpaper and just at least fix the landing. I can't get all the way up here, but I could get here technically, so I need to fix the landing. That's my next port of call when it comes to things to redo, I guess. But I have hung up one of my faux Japanese woodblock prints. It's a print of a woodblock print, not a real woodblock print, because again, that was cheaper. But I do have this little half moon table here, and this is the incense station. So we have all the good smelling incense, including the house blend from Freaks, which is one of my favorite stores down in Hudson, New York. I do need a new incense burner. This one's quite sad. But we have the channel classic of the Halloween candle holder with a little fossil and a match cloche, as I do love a good match cloche. A couple of older books, and then this little half round table that my mom and I picked up in Glens Falls, New York. This East Lake pier mirror, and pier mirrors are supposed to be installed between or across from windows, but I don't have a spot down here I can do that because of baseboard radiators. No shocking there. Although I would love to mount this one a little higher, like above this baseboard itself. So I might create a bit of a plinth for this before we mount it on the wall. When my mom visits next, we're going to try and mount this on the wall. So that means I need to take the wallpaper off and paint the wall green before I can do that. So that will be coming down the line as well. But this is an Eastlake spoon carved, technically, era pier mirror. The mirror is new because the lads at the antique mall did break the mirror when they were loading it into the truck back in Colorado. However, I don't think that was the original mirror either, so it wasn't like a huge loss. I still would like to take this one out and antique it, so I'll have to do that sometime as well. But at least this fits the, well, I mean, it's honestly a little early for the era of the house because Eastlake is much more like 1870s through 1880s, and this house wasn't built until 1890. But of course, the colored light coming in here, being reflected off of here, I do find that quite delicious. I'm a predictable creature. And here is my finished repainted pumpkin. I think it looks much more like a fairy tale pumpkin now. It's got kind of orange shining through the high points, but it's now a dusty, bluish, greenish pumpkin, that sort of like layer of pumpkin dust. I don't really know what that is on fruit, where it looks like they have dust on them. Like if you touch it, it goes away. Fruit frost, as it were. And then this is the original pumpkin. Honestly, I quite like the matte finish of the painted one better. But it's important to have year-round pumpkins when you're going for a Haunted Mansion vibe, right? This is a hint of Halloween, and we need just a hint of Halloween at all times. And that is living next to my favorite jardiniere that I've found. I spent too much on this. I do believe it was like $90, which is not bad for one of these, especially in good condition, for like a Majolica jardiniere planter pot, especially it's kind of like gallon plus size. But how was I gonna walk out of there when I saw this one that has like cicada moth thingies on it? Talk about screaming my name. So this is probably like I assume this is actually a turn of the century one. This could be a later repro. I don't know. The repro ones, I've never seen them with moths on them. So, you know, I've never seen any of them with these kind of bugs on them. So I was very happy to find this. And of course we have some fake fern sticking out of our fake palm. But just, you know, because the Victorians can have a real palm, but I need a fake palm because Xander would eat a real one and I would forget to water it. So double whammy there. And Sophia is here to help model the rug, which is of course smoothly laying against my floor where there is no sad tile. It's very exciting. It was a time-consuming switch to go ahead and take a break and take all that tile out. But as Sophia is demonstrating, having a smoother floor, it's worth it, especially now that the floor is painted black. Although, of course, between the cats and me, the floor is not always pristine, but we're doing our best. She's doing a very good job of asking for pets right now. Do you just need to be petted, Mopin? Yes. Yes, you do. You're very silly. Hello. Hello. And here we have the new pillows. I mean, the pillows themselves are the same, but the new pillow covers with the black velvet, black velvet flock, HTV cut flock on that silk patch on the front there, and then the black long pillow fringe on these. They were a little bit annoying to construct just because the velvet, the more fancy a velvet, the harder it is to stitch. And this was a slightly nicer velvet from Mood Fabrics, so it was a bit on the irritating side. But again, definitely worth it because these tie the black from the rest of the room into these chairs, which are of course a lighter element in this room. And while the motifs I chose are not exactly the same, again, it just helps to tie the whole idea together, or at least I think so. And I am still very happy with these chairs. They were a Facebook Marketplace bargain. I did drive out to, what was it called? I'll put the name of the town on the screen, which is a bit far away from the capital region as far as, you know, a morning drive goes, to pick these buddies up from a lumber yard. But I really, really enjoy them. They're comfortable and they're very fun wingback chairs. And I did make that tablecloth to hang on here that has the split up the back so that I could put it on this table lamp, which is what I like to call this lamp, because it's neither a lamp nor a table, it's both. But this helps to cover the white marble, which helps to not stand out so much, especially on camera when I film reveals of my projects here. I would like that to not shine out and kind of distract the eye when using this as more of a background as opposed to my foyer. So I think the tablecloth really helps with that. Plus, this fabric is very fun and it's been languishing in my stash for a while. I got it in London. I originally planned to use it for a garment, but it is much more of a upholstery-ish fabric. So I think it actually works better for home decor like this. Here on the table lamp, we have Fleetwood Mac. No, that's the record stand, which is acting as a plant stand right now. But I have a little cranberry glass vase with some fake foliage. I have a apothecary jar with some fake foliage and then some spools under a cloche. Here I have a little hand dish that was actually part of Target's Halloween line last year. I've been trying not to go to Target, but of course The one exception I made was I ran in for some like paper towels and then I fell victim to the Halloween section, which is typical, honestly. If you're gonna have a lapse in judgment, it's gonna be because there's good Halloween stuff, but it's a very cool dish that I could use for pins, or in this case, calling cards. And these are actually vintage, or I guess antique calling cards from the Erskine family. They were all from the Erskines. So whoever this was, there was a family of Erskines who all had their own customized calling cards, and apparently they've been calling on me. This was something that the Victorians did. They would call upon people, and if they weren't there or were not receiving visitors, they would leave their card to say that they had been by, and then I guess you could call them back by, and when I say call, I don't mean on the phone, that wasn't a thing, but by going to their house and paying a call, which I guess is how we ended up with making a call, perhaps. And then over here underneath the sort of little nook window area, of course there's the larger window that I normally keep covered with the glowing shade because I do like it, and because it gives me a little bit more privacy in this room and helps with filming, although this does have to be pulled up when the air conditioner is on. So I am going to make a sort of lace shade that's custom to go around the sad air conditioner there. Funnily enough, they don't make replica lace shades to anticipate you having a saddle air conditioning unit in the window. So I'm gonna have to make a custom one. That way I can pull the silk shade up and have some sort of a sheer curtain there still for, again, a little bit more privacy and for the vibes of it all. Even though we do have our white air conditioning unit there, it's just a necessity of modern life. And I'm sure in 1890 they would have loved to have had an air conditioner, even if they could not. Our pattern wraps all the way around the corner here with the stenciling and hand painting. Then of course I did put a little bit of film in this window, which helps tie in the green glow of it all. I do have a nice, large, big faux fern. This is a faux Boston fern. I did actually have a real one for a little bit last fall, but Xander ate the whole thing. Day by day, he had like a frond a day. Keeps me upset, I guess. And then over here on the East Lake table from a furniture store up in Ballston Spa that I really quite like, especially for brown furniture. I have a tray where I can set mayo and a little bowl with the remote controls for all my fancy LED colored lights. And by fancy, I mean they're not that expensive. They're just fun. Then I have a crate with some records for the record player that is just here because, of course, I can then play records. And the router and modem are actually hidden down here behind some other stuff, so we can't see them, but they are essential, again, for modern life. But I think this is a nice, fun little corner back here. I also did recently pick up this oil painting, which was $100, which is quite expensive. But I really like the painting. This is not a print. This is an actual oil painting. It's probably contemporary. I'm not sure how old this is. The frame is a good chunky frame. Honestly, frames like this, plaster frames, or like gesso or gesso frames like this, are usually around $100 or more anyway. So I think I got quite a deal. And I actually really love this painting. It's a still life, and it's obviously not a real Flemish Dutch floral, but it's got that same kind of like arsenic color in the background that I use often in my rooms. So I'm actually in love with this painting, and I would like to move it over to the landing eventually, especially because actually more light comes in this window than those. So I'm going to move it over there eventually, but I want to have something else to put here before I do that, because I do think this lends some light and balance into this corner. And looking back the other direction, I have a curtain hanging here just for now. It's actually normally in the other doorway back there, but I'm actually trying to reorganize like my tools and like nuts and bolts and all the things. So there's a bit of a mess in the dining room right now, so I didn't want you to have to look at that. And I do have the fun 6-legged table from an antique store in Colorado, my favorite antique store in Denver, the Colorado Antique Gallery on Broadway. If you're ever in Denver, make sure to check it out, because I can't, and I miss it dearly, mostly because the antique stores here are great, but usually small, and in Colorado, you can rock up to one antique mall and spend half a day there. It's harder to find big antique malls here, I think. And I did collect some of the butterflies that were in the dining room on the plate rack, and I put them here on the wall, and I really like how that ties blue from other areas of the house in along this wall. I will either frame more butterflies or purchase more framed butterflies, either way, depending on how flush I'm feeling, or how DIY I'm feeling, I guess. Or actually find plates that I want to put on that plate rack anyway, because I want to fill it with porcelain and or stoneware anyhow. Not butterflies, wherein butterflies can live out here. And on the table, I have a little runner that I actually picked up from a shop on Etsy that does like replica tapestry stuff, so I can go ahead and actually link this runner below. There's not much I'll be able to link in this video, but I can link that runner. I have some more cloches. Some of these I made here on the channel. I was pinning those butterflies in that butterfly pinning video, and I stuck them into a candle and stuck them under a cloche. Of course, we have McConnell, the lamp, the TV lamp, named after the fact that I saw that Christine McConnell had this exact TV lamp and I just had to track one down because I love it. You can find these on eBay and Etsy sometimes. Then I have my beaded arachnid cloche here, just a little display of my beaded brooches. And there's actually a Shabti figure pendant that was a gift as well that I keep safely under glass. We have a candle snuffer, and a match cloche here. This one is leather bound, but I really liked this dish that was made in Japan. It's kind of a faux satsuma dish, and it's super pretty. Little porcelain dish I found last time I was out antiquing in Ballston Spa. I do love some antiquing in Ballston Spa. It's like antiquing in Hudson, only cheaper, which is why I prefer it. Over here we do still have the cast iron fireplace of Red Doom. Again, eventually would love to replace this, paint it, something, upgrade the situation. We'll work on that later. I did find this really nice footed pedestal planter at Home Goods recently. I think it was $19 to put another faux palm in. Again, tying in that Victorian idea of having these tropical plants in the house. I really try and find faux plants that A, either look quite real, or B, fit the idea of what Victorians were using in their homes at the time, as opposed to just finding, like, a fiddle leaf fig is really trendy for now, but it's not something that was seen in Victorian homes as often. So I try and find things like a parlor palm, or even more like monstera, seem to be something that was more likely to be seen in a Victorian parlor. So that's kind of what I try and go for. And that was the idea here. Again, some more moss and faux ferns stuck around that to make it a little bit more real. Although if you get close to that one, you can tell she's a bargain buddy. Whereas these ferns are actually really nice. The website that I got these from is called Cotton and Crete, and I really like these two. I have two of them. There's one in the other room as well. But I noticed that when I went back on that website recently, they have updated a lot of their images to obviously be using AI, so I would not shop with them again in the future, because what are you doing? Also, how am I supposed to know if I'm gonna like a product when the image of it is no longer real? Not cute. But I do have my newish, oldish sconce. This again is probably from the mid-century, made to look like a gas sconce. We know this because this does not actually turn. If it were an actual gas fitting, this would turn the gas off and on, but this one is a faux gas fitting, always made to be electric, which probably makes it a little bit safer, although it has been recently rewired. I grabbed this sconce at a shop called the Colonial Lamp Shop in Hoosick Falls, or near Hoosick Falls, New York. So if you're anywhere between the capital region and Vermont, I highly recommend stopping in that shop because they have amazing lamps of both, wall, hanging, table variety. They have every lamp you could want, all very pretty, great reasonable prices on those, and everything has been rewired. So highly recommend that shop, although it is cash only, so do know that. And then I have my largest shadow box of different butterflies here that I put together many years ago that used to hang near my cut table in Colorado, but now, of course, hangs here. It was upstairs, but it was in a high spot where it wasn't really seen much, so I'm slowly moving the butterflies to their final position. They move around the house until they find their true home. She just keeps flopping either at or practically underneath my feet. Sophies, do you just think all time is pet me time? That's what you think? That's what she thinks. Also, it's nearly time for her dinner, and my dinner for that matter. Let's finish this up so that we can have dinner, okay, Moopy? And stop tracking little bits of floof around my house. And here, of course, I still do need to remove the tile and the wood beneath it from the tiny closet. I left that for a rainy day because I had quite enough getting the rest of the plywood out of here that I feel like future me can deal with that small square footage in there. But here's the last of the paneling and stenciling / patterning faux wallpaper effect that I did with you here in this corner. Again, I try to decide on a wall by wall, section by section basis where I think most of the light in the room is coming from. So here it would be coming from this direction, so it's hitting that side of the stonework, as it were. And on this side, the light is coming in from the stairwell, kind of coming in, hitting this direction. That's kind of the idea here. Of course, trying to make this look a bit recessed, like the light is coming in and hitting it. But overall, I am super pleased with how this has come together so far. It's taken me a lot longer to get this far than I had originally wanted, mostly because I decided to do the walls, but I also think it was well worth it to do the walls because I think it's quite fun. And in the future, when I do redo these walls, and like take the old wallpaper off, have the plaster fixed up, etc., and put new wallpaper on, I will probably have a replication of this paper made or make it myself somehow. So This design I think will be staying, although I previewed so many different wallpapers that I liked, and I love wallpaper, but then in the end, I always want my custom one instead because it's me. But this room is looking so much more Haunted Mansion approved, gives that Addams Family vibe a little bit when you walk in, and I'm excited to keep working on it and refining it more in the future, including fixing up the nook and the floor in the nook and upstairs as well, and then again, eventually having this wallpaper removed and the green color extended up into the very tall stairwell and upstairs hallway. Also in the future, I would like to make an ottoman for here. I've been looking at different references for that. I haven't been able to find anything that I really, really like, so I think I might have to make something to go there for the cats to bound up and off of, sleep on, and for me to be able to put my feet up. So that's a future project. And then of course in the future, I do hope to paint both this ceiling up in the nook area, up in the stairwell nook, and then this entire ceiling in here will be receiving a East Lake inspired, aesthetic movement inspired ceiling as well. The Victorians rarely left a ceiling all to its own devices, so I shall be patterning this one in the future, and my neck is already upset about it. But although this has been a very strange and disjointed makeover, decorating diary so far, I hope you have enjoyed seeing how this room has been coming together. Again, it's still not finished, but it is a lot further down the line from where I started, and I'm really excited to live in this space now that I have it mostly put together and mostly put back together, because nothing like having your house pulled apart when you need to redo a floor to really make you miss an organized, chill space instead. And that is what I'm looking forward to after I get my tool storage area figured out.
And I did want to give you a look at what the space looks like as dusk falls, as night begins to shroud the curtains in darkness, which, seeing as my home decor taste obviously leans a little bit more Morticia than anything else, after sundown is not only how I prefer to view this space, but also most spaces I ever enter into. I hope you've enjoyed seeing this room come together thus far, and thank you so much for watching, and a huge shout out thanks to my patrons who of course make my videos and all of this possible. And as always, I'll be back with more sewing, vintage fashion, costuming, crafting, and decorating real soon, so I'll see you then. Bye!